there seems to be just one belief system which dominates policy decisions, which is the Phillips curve, which leads it. And the Phillips curve is a purported, I would say, a fabled relationship between the tightness of the labor market and subsequent increases or decreases in the price of labor in terms of wages.
Sure.
And anyone listening would recognize that the unemployment rate is historically really very, very low. And therefore there is a mindset that the keeping the car on the middle of the road requires, like, tapping the brakes. Um, but the Phillips curve, like many economic models, which worked up until, I want to call it, the Asian tiger crisis in the late 1990s,
Hmm.
doesn't work. Um, as evidence, we talk about that kind of the period post the Great Financial Crisis. And from the highs, the unemployment highs of, the contraction in the economy, we went from 10% unemployment to less than 3.5.
Yeah.
And if you plot the rate of change in labor wages, it is simply an undulating, oscillating,
Rant.
range-bound series. Um, they pursued this methodology from Janet Yellen in 2015, and Jay really accelerated it into 2018. And again, it was predicated on that motivation. And so, to my mind, and indeed I could go back to 2013 with Bernanke, and I would say that his call to he there was a call to arms. He asked private sector, he asked the yield curve to reprice the 10-year. He said, I'm fearful that the economy really is getting legs, and so the purported notion that he would end quantitative easing, and we had 7.5% unemployment, and the market raised 10-year to 3, and the thing slid. And so here we are 15 years later, and we have a very visible orthodoxy of the Federal Reserve, a very visible reaction function. Um, and, and it seems more of a dead weight, because we can categorically say that from the economic lows, which would have been kind of springtime of 2009, yeah, that the real per capita increase in GDP is diabolically bad. I mean, it's way below the period. If you index to 100 and you took 1930 or some date, there. I mean, we
No.
something is amiss, and it just. So here you are, and you speak to all these masters of the universe, but we have it. There's just this unanswered, like, at the when the chairman meets the press and the economists, no one says, why do you believe in the Phillips curve? Why? Tell me.
Yeah. I'd say that's a lot. I see the reaction function. There's no question that the uncertainty that the Fed sees is the tight labor market, and they are worried that the Phillips curve is true. The question is, are they acting in that way? Um, and we'll see. I think that the interesting thing that's going to happen in the next year, some may think it's soon, some may think it's soon. The interesting thing that's going to happen is when inflation actually is back down to target and labor markets are still tight, whether the Fed will stay um, tight, restrictive, because they are worried that the labor market will is operating with a lag and will generate the classic. Um, so I think that could happen, and I'm very interested to see if they stick with the Phillips curve when inflation is appears to be done and the labor market is still tight.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, in 3 months, in 90 days, Andy, CPI prints are going to be 3.5%, and Fed funds are going to be positive real.
yeah, it's it's it could happen. As I said, I'm not making a call on that. It could be. Um, my interest is whether what will they do when presented with target inflation and tight labor. Because if they're true to their Phillips curve, they expect that the inflation will reignite.
Which is to say, if they are true to the reaction function, which is to be blind to the reality of the last 15 years, then they will continue to possibly pursue suboptimal policies.
Right. So the question is, have they gone too far already, or or will they go too far eventually? And my view is they probably will, given all of that and their and the potential that they are influenced by that orthodoxy, it is more likely that they'll go too far.
Sad but true. Not an uplifting moment to end, but there you go. It matches. I'm kind of been sneezing and sniffling. Thank goodness it's a remote conversation. Andy, thank you very much for your elucidation.
It was a
We
pleasure meeting you and a pleasure talking with you.
indeed. Well,